For the next hour, we're going to talk about early childhood. And so I'm excited to introduce His Excellency, Thamer AlQasimi, the Executive Director of the Early Childhood Authority in Abu Dhabi. Let's start right away.
I'll start that. It's really lovely to have you all. There is a common ground for all of us, our love to the future, foresights all together as bright brains, but I think it's also early children that also brings us together. Everybody is a mom or a father or a niece, an uncle, and whatever it is, children is always an area of an interest. I'm really privileged to be part of the team that will take you through a very quick journey on Early Childhood Authority, but we will also have Dr. Magdalena. She will tell us a little bit about herself, where she will take us about our efforts to bring this forward in the agenda of early childhood. And then my colleague Yaqub also will introduce himself before we start this presentation. Tell us maybe something about yourself.
Oops. This is okay. Thank you. So, hello everybody. Very nice to to be here. My name is Maddalena Campioni. I'm the foresight expert at the Early Childhood Authority. Been developing future and foresight for the past 20 years, and now I'm lucky enough to be working with fantastic people in Abu Dhabi, and looking forward to talk to you about what we did in the past. I pass the microphone to my colleague Yaqub.
Hi, my name is Yaqub Azabi, and I'm the head of Future Foresight at the Early Childhood Authority. Just to echo the sentiment of His Excellency Thamer, you know, even if we're not parents, we've all been children at one point. So it's something that we can all relate to, regardless of our background, regardless of our values, regardless of our education. It's kind of that one common ground that holds us all together. So it's something that when we engage with people on, they tend to naturally be very passionate about, given that association. So very happy to have you here and sticking around for the session. Thank you.
All right, before who we are, what are we trying to produce in general? Young children who flourish is a statement that a lot of it's been overused and everywhere, but what does this child look like at the end of their stage in early childhood? And what is exactly defines early childhood and things like this? We will try to take you through it very quickly, but are we trying to have superheroes, superpowers, or more than that? I think it's for us to see. But who we are an entity really devoted to look at the best interest of little children from pregnancy all the way to the age of 8. And we define ourselves with 4 different words. One of them is enabler, understanding that the ecosystem and the services delivered to young children comes from multi-sectorial perspective, health and nutrition, as well as early care and education, parent support, and also protecting that little children. And also we define ourselves as a policymaker. So we're trying to really create a lasting impact, a sustainable impact. And we believe a policy is part of that tools. Knowledge Hub, we are all about evidence-based. So what we're trying to do as a Knowledge Hub is not only provide expertise in our domain, but also try to use research, data in regard to building sound decisions. And finally, a disruptor. We like to define ourselves as a disruptor in the ecosystem in general, knowing that we need to bring 4 different sectors together in order for us to have a shared vision when it comes to the developments of young children. And again, so it's about that role that we're trying to change. So everything that we do day to day is about changing perspective, changing behaviors, not only to the government sector, but also bringing the whole ecosystem together. And again, early childhood development is about linguistic, social, emotional, linguistic, maybe the physical, the cognitive parts of the child development aspect. But I'll just give a linguistic. I think little children, according to their research, by the age of 5, they could speak up to 3 languages. The question is, do we still need to teach them languages? Did I have to speak English so that we have a common? I think with less than $100, there is a devices that you can put in your ear. You'll be able to understand me. You'll be able to speak your own language, and I will be able to understand you. But is that the kind of thing that will really support your cognitive developments as a child as well as a human being. These kind of questions we're not afraid to ask nowadays and saying maybe we don't need to learn languages anymore. There are technologies and so on that really could close that gaps, and it's very affordable as well. Finally, our strategy, we're a 4 years old organization only, and we are in our 5th year now. We've been looking at really how can we also influence by just only going through our one-page strategy, and not only the focus on the vision that also relates to core value and strong values that we're trying to instill within the children, having and ensuring that they are curious children as well. But we try to, in a way, change something in mind. You see at the bottom line, there are 7 programs on the past. Now they became 9 based on a strategy refresh that we did a month ago. And part of what I said, one of the sectors is early care and education. You will not see any of these programs called early care and education. The reason for that is, again, social and behavioral change. We wanted to tell everybody that early childhood is not about what you learn in school, and it's not the responsibility of the education sector only. It is way beyond that. And that's why we wanted people to be curious and start to ask why we don't see the word early care and education strongly highlighted in your programs. But our programs varies from national identity, which is a challenge for all of us, no matter where you're from. And also we look after child protection, human capital, people that works. In Abu Dhabi alone, we have 97 different positions that come in contact with little children. And for us to understand that ecosystem, what university is offering, what are the challenges, how's the environment, what kind of degrees, licensing, how can we ensure professional developments, all of these are under human capital, but we also have future foresights in the essence of who we are. And that's why we are here, willing to, even with our first steps into this domain, we're trying to share some of what we've learned and some of our findings together. And also we have data, research, we have the parent support, education, health and nutrition, early interventions and detections, which is something that is not explored enough internationally. How can I intervene with child development challenges at an early stage is also a niche program that we are looking after. And finally, urban planning. How do we design spaces to fit from the eyes of the little children in order for them to flourish and have that opportunity to learn is also something new that we've taken under our wings at the moment. This is it. Is this an imagination? Is this something, when we put our strategy together, we wanted to know one thing. Where are we heading? How are we going to measure whether or not what we're doing will really have a lasting impact? And at that time, we took a long time in 2018, 2019, just to identify the attribute, the aspirations of little children at the age of 8. What can all of us say about a child at the age of 8 we're able to do or can do in respective of their challenges or their ability or their background, ethnicity, religion, whatever it is. And at that time, we came up with these statements. They are available to you on the slides later on. But we wanted to say, is this the future or this is imagination? Is this what we really seek? Is this what we're trying to have as an end results? All these are still under question because, as I said, we're only 4 years and our strategy is until 2030. And so this is still to be tested, but sure enough, we would love to be able to say all this about our young children at the age of 8. Now it's about fun because this session is quite long. It's an hour all together with the panelists as well. However, we will try to ask you to also do fun things for us. We are all about joy and so on, and we would love to know about you. But because I try to stay away from being childish, it's a playful but not childish. But leave, please kindly, if you log in and you manage to get access, just to leave a childhood memory. We will try to also compare it with something that we've done back in Abu Dhabi. We'll see if there is some sorts of alignment in this regard, but I will allow you to get access and maybe we will put the results live on the screen. Yeah. So, and then.
Yeah, and Wonderful. Yeah, I can maybe read through, but it will be very interesting to see because we did a similar exercise, just in a different way, with Martin and Luz in Abu Dhabi when we developed the labs. And so today is really about, yes, let you know what we did, what we are doing in foresight and futures literacies, but also know what you think. You know, see where you stand, see how, you know, these things come about. So I can say joy, love, curiosity, fun, wonderful. Food, I see food. I'm originally Italian, so I see food. But I think also in the UAE, we are very much fan of food. Playground, curiosity is the main, and playful joy. Wonderful, wonderful. Oh, you know, we're still going. We're still going. Uncle, brother, safe, twill. I mean, a family gathering, violin. Oh, that's an interesting one. Somebody had to explain me. Yeah. 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 Circus. Yeah. Free flight, fights. Okay. Of course, yeah, as a child, yeah. Wonderful, thank you. So I think we're more or less there, right? So I think we got it. So this is really nice. Thank you very much. This is very interesting. And we wanted to show you what we did in Abu Dhabi. So where do I have to point this one? Yeah, but oh, I didn't go back. There we go. So that's what we got from the Abu Dhabi lab. Thinking of others, imaginations, change pain to good memories, creative tradition, strengthening bonding. So no food wasting. We got a food from this side and we got no food wasting. But, so there's very much a similarity, but there's also a difference. So how do you interpret this? How do you see this? How you even communicate this? There's an exercise I all the time have people to do in my workshop, which is about, you know, having a piece of paper and then I give instruction on how to, you know, break the piece of paper into bits and pieces. And all the people do it in a different way. So even though they had the same information, the way they interpret this information or the way they communicate this information is very different from all of us. And this will bring us probably into the labs later on, before I start explaining a little bit how we develop foresight in ECA, Early Childhood Authorities, abbreviated as ECA. And we'll see how actually the labs were developed in Abu Dhabi. And then we'll have a little interactive session where you actually had to say your opinion or your voting where you stand in the future of parenting and the future of learning and so on. But I had to keep the timing, and I see Eva there really serious about it. So I'm going to run. So what did we do? So when I arrived at ECA, the director said, okay, you know what, we want to develop foresight. But he didn't give me any directive, but he said, you know what, we want everybody to understand it, everybody to build it, everybody to doing it. And I said, that's great. That is the best thing I could hear. So what I did, I developed a plan which is divided in 4 pillars. So the pillars are up here, and we are part in foresight of the strategy system, but ECA is a big family. So it doesn't stand only in one place. We actually communicate and collaborating with all the teams around, and we try to collaborate even further into Abu Dhabi and create an ecosystem. One of the first things I did, the poor people at ECA still remember me. I decided, okay, we need to go to Finland to see how actually foresight was integrated into the government system. And when did I brought Emirati people to Finland? In December. So then we went and it stuck in my memory exactly what happened there. Why? Because I wanted to make them understand that actually what we need to build is an ecosystem. If we do foresight in ECA only, it won't work. We need to collaborate with the rest of Abu Dhabi. We need to collaborate with the rest of the Emirates. We need to collaborate with the rest of the world in order to do it successfully. And I don't know where I saw that, but there was a quote that say progress is not brought about by individualists, but by the open-hearted, the people that want this collaboration, that wants the, common understanding and knowledge, and even inside the foresight world, which keeps on changing. My 20 years, what the other years in the foresight system, it changed so much over the years. And now people say, oh no, this is futures literacy. Oh no, this is foresight. Oh no, this is something else, technology foresight. Oh no, this is science fiction. We actually are all part of the same. We all need each other. It's not one or the other. Those are all tools in order to create resilience for the future, like we are part of humanity. So without further ado, the 4 things we're doing is, 1, create the literature. So we create reports and trends, mega trends, scenarios, and you name it. On the other side, we create a space for children. And the labs actually sit in that space of capacity building, but also involving the rest of the world into our thinking. And then there is the ecosystem, as I already mentioned. And finally, the capacity building, which is integrated in all of those. So the project that we are going to expose today is actually a fantastic project where Luz and Martin help us out in putting to life. And it's a futures literacy project where we thought, okay, children are a special position because they are developing. They are developing their brain, they are developing themselves. And they set what we call the operating system. So it's set at that time. That's when it's set. So if we want to understand what are the underlying assumptions, or what creates resilience for the long term, for the future, for future society, we need to really work with that, with the early childhood. We need to understand, how do we expand their imagination? How do we create that space? And so ECA wanted to do that by creating these labs, Futures Literacy Lab, and try to understand what are the underlying assumptions, what are the boundaries, how do we bring about how do we surface the foundations of this operating system. So that's the journey that we embarked on. So we are halfway through the journey, as you can see. So we developed what is called the future of parenting. That was the first one. We start from the family. Then the second one was the future of learning. And we will have some insight. Jakub will tell you all about it from our side, and we'll ask you to actually bring about your insight on that. We are here today to present it to you. We'll prepare a paper, and I have a paper out of it. And the third one, the third lab, will be in January, and is the future community. So we go from parenting to learning into the communities, and then we'll have a capacity building workshop in order to create the common understanding, the common knowledge and foresight. So that's our ambitions, that's our projects, and it's a little bit more details here. And what we attempt to do with that is to blend what is bringing about new insights, a little bit of foresight research, as we call it, together with the capacity building. What we did, we brought, every time, every lab, we have a group of people, or participants, or enablers, or experts, as we call them. They come from all parts of society. So the future is not built by me, you, or another expert, but it's built by all of us. Whether you are a parent, whether you are a child, whether you are a practitioner, whether you are a carer, whether you are teachers, doctors, and an expert, an academic, a government employee, you name it. So with an investors, very important. So we tried actually in those labs to gather a little bit of everything. So the participants were so wide so that we could have a little bit of that insights. Obviously, there's always a limitation on the number of people you can have because they're very interactive labs, but we try our best to have that kind of background. So without going too much further, I'll pass the microphone to Jakub to give you the insights.
Thank you very much. And just to carry on from your last point on the kind of the breadth of different, personalities and persona that we invited to these labs, we kind of broke a couple rules when it comes to, public sector protocol and, what the expectations are when you're inviting these attendees and kind of going against the grain with customs and expectations, and that we invited people across all levels of seniority. So we had, executive directors sitting next to fresh graduates who are a month into their job. And we got a few comments at the beginning because it was a risky play from our culture, and it was like, oh, what am I doing here? Who are these people? Why am I sitting with them? But we were very pleased and relieved towards the end of the session to be, personally thanked that we kind of set it up in this way and, brought these different perspectives and really kind of taking off your public service servant hat and expressing yourself as a member of society. So that was really fascinating to see and definitely something we'd like to do more of in the future. So without further ado, I'll share with you a few key takeaways from the two labs. So we'll focus first on parenting. We'll take you through the expected and desired futures that we discussed, as well as some basic assumptions, as well as dichotomies that we surfaced through these exercises. So just to take you through the expected futures of parenting, technology-driven optimization of parenting, how can you streamline your life? How can you simplify things and make things easier for you as a parent via technology? As well as greater wisdom and conscious parenting, kind of breaking away from the pragmatic, I would say, practical approach to parenting and kind of really tuning into your to your gut feeling of what feels right, that inner child that tells you how to raise your own children. And her grandmother and breaking the cycle of good or bad parenting. And then some of the desirable futures. And I found this really interesting in that we're discussing these desirable futures and discussing these different perspectives that would complement each other, but also sometimes be contradictory, and just kind of embracing that contradictory nature and digging deeper and then actually realizing actually they're not that contradictory because there is a way that these concepts could coexist. The strongest one for me would be kind of the nature versus technology. So kind of wanting to embrace technology while wanting to return to nature as well. So just to take you through a few desirable futures, focus on fulfillment, AI-assisted parenting, again, going back to streamlining, making our lives easier, having time to be parents, genetically modified children. One controversial one that came up quite a few times was this idea of licensed parents, and we put license in quotations because even as we're talking through this, there was an acknowledgement that having children or being a parent is a human right that you can't take away from anyone, but it's more kind of dissecting it in the sense of what do we consider as a qualified parent, and then how can we kind of reach that level, that standard. Basic assumptions, something a lot of people can relate to, again, even if you're not a parent, as a former child, is the parent knows more than you, or the parent knows better. I think we're starting to find that that's no longer true. our children are quickly and very rapidly outsmarting us and kind of turning the table and oftentimes teaching us. And there has to be an acceptance of that, and there has to be this idea that, sometimes they do know better. Not all the time, but a lot of the times, and that we have to have that keenness and that open mind to kind of listen and understand their perspective as well. The authority and legitimacy of parents, as well as the role and purpose of parenting, kind of reimagining the role of the parent and the dynamic between the parent and the child. There was a lot of discussion around kind of dropping the word parent and kind of reimagining them as a mentor or a guide through life to kind of show them opportunities while not forcing them to go in one way or another. And then some of the dichotomies that we also explored were system versus individual, freedom versus control, order versus disorder, optimization versus personalization, authority versus guidance and mentoring. So the last thing I want to do is just talk at you for the next half hour. So we're going to do a little bit of an exercise and also give you an opportunity to stretch your legs. So if we could ask everyone to stand, I think we should stand up as well. Yeah, will be a good example. If everyone could stand up, stretch your legs. Yeah. Yeah. So we have two concepts here, quite polar. I don't want you to think about it too much. On the left side, so my left, we have parents should be guided and supported. I'd like anyone that agrees with that resonates with them. Don't think about it too much. My left. Right side. Yes. Okay, I see. I'm reading that one. Okay. Sorry. So there we go. So parenting should be guided and supported. Stand over here by where Luce is. Just shift around. You don't have to come down. You could just shift to the side that you agree with. Yeah. And then for the parenting is based on trusting their own inner child. Come over to this side. Yeah.
Because we're collecting this is going into the
We'll send over consent forms.
So do they? Yeah.
All right. So the second.
Wait.
Let's second.
Did I lose the clicker? I do have. Well, I think before moving on to the next one, maybe if we hear from one or two people on the extreme ends. Yeah,
Let's switch. We'll take it for another question and then we'll have a dialogue. All right, where do you stand?
Parenting is based on ensuring the safety of the child over on this side. So we could, yeah, let's do that.
No, it's just a new, so forget the last one.
So parenting is based on ensuring the safety of the child over here. Parenting is based on giving the child freedom to experiment over on this side. No one wants to say they don't care about the safety of children. They ruined the competition.
All right, now you can open this. Thank you.
Right. So if anyone has any strong opinions, any weak opinions, any opinion at all about what we just went through, yeah, someone on the extreme end, if they'd like to chime in and kind of share their perspective and their reasoning.
Anything of it?
Yeah.
To
Anyone raise your hand, or I'll start picking at random.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, you'll need a mic. We're coming to you.
But it should be, of course, done with the necessary safety. That's why we're here. We're in the middle. Sorry for that.
Would you mind maybe just giving us a word on what you mean by safety?
It's to have a certain control. Yeah.
So safety is about control. Noted. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it's on. So I have 9 grandchildren. Okay, thank you. And I really, I thought about, oh yeah, safety, I better get over here. And then I thought, what do you really do? And I like for them to solve their own problems. And listening to my son's stories about the things that he did when I wasn't looking, I realized that I really can't provide safety, by control. But what I can do is give them the permission to fail. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then a few key takeaways on the future of learning. I'm just going to run through this really quickly, and then happy to have a discussion after the session if you want to talk about it more in depth. Technology integration, of course, keeps popping up. Scaling down to communities or just individuals versus kind of an entity or an organization. Emphasis on values and culture is one that came up very often across multiple topics. And shifting focus to depth and quality of learning rather than kind of, checking a box and saying, you did what you have to do to get a piece of paper. And then desirable futures, again, another conversation back to nature, inner nature, environmentalism, as well as exploring new areas of knowledge and wisdom, expanding self-agency in learning, child-led learning, understanding what they're curious about and what they're interested in, and then kind of taking the role to understand their interests and mold it into something practical or something that kind of gives something back to society. And just take you through one basic assumption as well as one dichotomy. So the basic assumption is learning for learning's sake, almost not for a purpose. And then the dichotomy was curiosity and play versus a utilitarian approach to learning, which leads up into our, one thing before the exercise, novel perspectives that we also surfaced from the session, kind of exploring the purpose of education and how it relates to learning. And this need to distinguish the two. And again, that goes back to kind of viewing learning as an institution versus learning as, something that's self-driven. As well as the definition of success and failure of learning and the limits of measures and performance. So, how much have our measures kind of benefited us so far? There's this acknowledgement that whatever we do has to be scalable and kind of has to, apply to the, lowest common denominator, but then also acknowledging that maybe that doesn't work for some people, and what are the alternatives, and what can we do about that? So again, we'll get you all to stand up again. I know it seems like we just sat down. Two perspectives. Learning aims to teach a child what society requires over at that side. Learning aims to satisfy a child's curiosity over at this side.
Didn't do the left right on purpose, it just kind of happened that way. Just
And the last question.
And then learning as play over on this side, and learning as utility over on this side. We have a very playful bunch.
You're alone, come on.
It also oh, thank you. Technically speaking, the idea that the playing is not useful is a basic assumption that you might have on this side, if I may.
I'll stand with you.
I think learning is a tool of socialization, which is very useful. I have 3 children, so they can play on their own. It can be done via self-learning. All my 3 sons are playing with Xbox. They learn everything from YouTube in an autodidactic way. It doesn't require a teacher or an external educator. But socialization must be done via learning.
Interesting dichotomy.
I have to respond to that. Thinking about when you're talking about socialization and how sometimes play does teach them, for example, if we think about gender and you do see gender roles coming out in play, so it can actually serve both functions.
Yeah. So in my perspective, you know, with technology growing exponentially, so soon the kids, they will have their own large language models. So in my perspective, we need to really encourage imagination, going out of the box, and therefore to be able to create a difference if they enjoy. I think that's a good way for them to do that. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Should I close? So thank you very much for this. Thank you very much for your comment and insights. It is very important for us because all the 3 labs, they were developed in Abu Dhabi. So we, you know, even though we try to have this variety of participants, we always had on the back of our mind, you know, is it only Abu Dhabi point of view, or is it a global point of view? You know, Abu Dhabi doesn't live in isolation. So we want to see how it is comparable to another perspective, to another point of view of things. So I'm glad to hear that, you know, we had similar ideas, that we kind of try to think, but a few things that came out were also quite interesting that were not coming out during the workshop. The utility thing, right? That one was because what happened is during the lab, we have a kind of unknown scenarios that were posed in front. And it was, what if play, you get paid for playing? And so that is when, you know, playing take a completely different meanings and they become utilitarian, right? And maybe it's not play anymore, but it has a lot of different ramifications where, you know, playing changes nature and things. So thank you very much really for your insights and for your things. What we want to do is open the floor for a little bit of discussion. So I'll pass the microphone
Passion.
It was forever actually to question you and us on our experience and your experiences and try to mix it up. So sorry, I initiate.
Well, maybe just to bounce off of that, because we, with Luce, and I'm going to speak for myself, we were the foreign element, so to speak, and so it was very interesting to come into what is a strong culture. Clearly, you can feel that you're walking into a tradition, And so it's really interesting to walk into this tradition and to, in my case, to be confronted to my own biases, because I inevitably walk into this tradition with the images, the narrative that I have of UAE, Abu Dhabi, what I think I know. And the first thing I'd like to say is just how deeply that is shaken when you actually, as usual, interact with individuals. And then suddenly what happens is that you actually find the common ground. And what greater common ground than parenting? Whether you're a parent or not, you've been a child. So when you start with childhood memories, and that was really incredible at how much that just brought out, I guess, our common humanity, or maybe our common childhood. So I just wanted to share that, because that was one big takeaway for me, and the point of this work.
Thank you. First of all, it was a wonderful experience to experience this incredible generosity and hospitality from this team. It was really wonderful to work there. And yes, indeed, I also had this assumption that, okay, UAE is just changing super fast. The futures thinking is really, taking a flight. And I assumed that a lot of the futures would be about futures thinking and a lot about more tech driven. But I think the exercise that we asked you to do to leave a childhood memory actually brought up a lot of actually brought the past or memories into the lab itself. And it made a lot of space for values, for culture, but also how fast things have gone. The participants, remembered I was reading my parents, the newspaper, my grandparents, and because they could not read and write, and it also caused a kind of really beautiful openness among the participants and a really warm sense of. Really good feeling, an open environment, an open atmosphere, which I really appreciated. And that was one of the things that I thought was, just a really, really nice surprise at how it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Seren from the Netherlands. I'm really inspired by the breadth and the level of depth, the integral approach, the systems thinking approach, but also how you've made this very applicable in a very tangible way that I think it's applicable to many different contexts. And when it comes down to that ecosystem building that you spoke about, Madeleine, I wonder, this very much lays the ground, right, for the kind of conducive conditions to create that kind of culture based on the values that you're mentioning. What do you think that ecosystem building requires? This is a great foundation, but what do we need to get there?
Thank you. Thank you. This is a great question. I don't know if I know what is needed, because I think it's a change in things and there is no one size fits all. The ecosystem that we found in Finland will not be the ecosystem that we need in Abu Dhabi. And there is no, we need to build our own. We can look at others, lesson learn. We went there, we interviewed different people, we talked to different people, we understood the challenges, we understood what worked well and what didn't, but then we had to build our own, because it's not one size fits all. That's the thing. So I don't have an answer to say what is it, but I
could maybe contribute to the word curiosity. We've seen it.
Yeah.
It's from a childhood memories. And as an organization, I think you need to live up that startup mode in order for you to change, and having a long breath as well to understand that it will take a lot. But from our perspective, we had strategy in place. It was 2030. And we knew the child aspirations we're trying to seek. We know the sectors we want to work with. And we thought this is the future. This is the future we're trying to change. The future generation will look maybe better than, will have a different perspective than ours, or perspective than us. Nevertheless, curiosity what drove us to really explore in this. And that's why there is intakes. It is always about telling people, let's think differently. Let's bring them. Let's try to just reset of everything that you bring, the package that you have, learned throughout the years. But for me personally, it was curiosity. I don't think that this project will really went forward at all without that element. Exactly. What is the outputs of this? Will it look different than the strategy that we have? Are we going to do things differently, expedite things? That's the passion that we had behind this project. Yeah.
Just when you just mentioned this, it reminded me of something. I don't know if you had the same feeling, but this notion that I think during the labs, especially the second one, there was a feeling of rediscovering curiosity. We tend to forget curiosity. We tend to forget the questioning and kind of reduce learning to education, reduce learning to a curriculum, and which are not necessarily opposites. But the feeling I got, and I like the word that you're using, that word, the word curiosity, because I really felt that during the lab, there was almost an aha moment of saying, hey, but wait a second. In fact, you mentioned that during the lab of saying, but what about learning for learning's sake? Just out of curiosity. And that's something that tends to be maybe lost and can be regained.
May I just ask another question? Yeah. You wanna?
I didn't hear that.
He gave it back to me, he says, yes. So it's very contextual and situational, but are there conducive conditions to facilitate curiosity, like inquiry, experimentation, being on the verge of discovery?
I'll tell you at my level, at least as an executive, you tend to just focus on result oriented. I have a strategy, I have deliverables, I need to focus. How can I get my team together? For us, I believe the way that we do business or do government, that's a terminology we use in ECA as an organization. We want to change the way that we do government. And that was basically our opening door to all of our partners and stakeholders. Why don't we come? Why don't we have that imaginations? Let's leave your office. Let's take you to Ferrari World. Let's take you to Kidzania. Let's take you to SeaWorld. And that's where basically we conduct our workshops. We take them outside of their own settings and comfort zones and meeting rooms where they anticipate that somebody will say something and a decision is needed to be made. So I think to stimulate that curiosity is just to take them away from what they're used to do and get them into not only the environment that you will conduct such things in, but also the spirit of there is no right and wrong. Everything is open. You're not representative of your own authority or your entity or company, whatever it is. It's a safe space. That's how we do it, not only for this project, but everything else. And it's been working. When you hear someone leaving the door and saying, you guys really do things differently, I think that raises the curiosity of, okay, what's next? What's next? What else you guys gonna do? I don't know.
If I can add.
Question, just a quick question on this one. Was saying it enough?
No, because it is at the level of the people or stakeholders you associate yourself with, yes, but it's not enough to create that change. You still need to go through many layers. Human capital is very important. People do not even understand the terminology, future foresights. How do you do it? What is the approach? Is there a lot of literature about it? We know that in this part of the world, yes, but not in there. So it takes a lot. You need to work at a different levels, just making sure everybody is ready, first of all, have a common understanding. And that's what the Dr. Magdalena did when she came on board. She wanted just people to understand, because I remember our first interaction, they told me, come and meet somebody onboarding. She just joined the organization about Future Foresight. And I told her, I know what I want to do. Please just don't tell me about the future. I just know what I want to do. And I'm curious to know, what did you get out of the team buildings or understanding from the team? And I want to judge whether or not this is something good for me or not. And so from that time to now, I came a long way to understand it. But it's not enough, because you need to socialize it with multiple layers as well. It's very important that you go up on the ladder. It's not enough only at maybe a C level. You need to also approach leaderships, because difficult policies, changes, legislations might be necessarily to set the foundation for such a concept.
I wanted just to add what you said earlier on creating the space for creativity. Creating the space is not only taking people out, but it also comes from the leadership that actually wanted to create that space. And so when you have that mandate, when you have that kind of things, that enable things, because people, as His Excellency Engineer Thamer said, you need to have time to practice thinking futures. And so you came a long way because you practiced over and over again, but you had to have the space, and then you develop that curiosity, not only at the level of kids, but the level of adults as well. We all need it every time, everything. So thank you so much.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I take the question and you answer.
Well, I was just going to pose the question about policy formation. So having spent many, many years working with advising governments and policy making, to what extent did you appreciate the change in the problem that occurred? Because as a policymaker, you can come up with a list of, so as a technocrat, you can approach the minister and say to the minister, look, here's a menu of 10 options, and they improve this, and they improve that, and there's evidence from over here, and there's evidence from over there, and that'll make things work better. Pick the best one on the menu. But what I'm hearing you talk about here is actually something that's different, which is that it's not just having the standard menu that addresses the problems you already know, but it's actually about discovering problems that you weren't all that aware of, like play, for instance, which seems to have come out as an important theme. And from the beginning, you wouldn't necessarily see play as a key variable, as a way to learn, as a way to create curiosity, as a way to create confidence, as a way to socialize, etc. But when you do a process like this, you see it differently. The problem is not the same, and therefore the policy solutions are not the same. So I wondered if that describes accurately what you experienced.
Thank you. It does, but I think you'll need to have a balance. Working in the government is not just always a blessing. So they have expectations, and we have a very, result-oriented or driven government as well back home. We're blessed actually for that. Nevertheless, we are accustomed to do things, and that's why I think what I didn't mention about this project is we still have our strategy, but we wanted to create this test lab in order for us to continue to revive this strategy on the side without an impact. So yes, the strategy did tell us what we need to close the gaps and things like this. How can we be more efficient on service delivery, and how can we have skilled laborers and. Nevertheless, we wanted something on the side to challenge that mindset. And when we went to our leadership, I remember we told them, are you okay with failures? Are you okay with disruption? Are you okay with people saying what these crazy guys are trying to do? And the answer was yes. And that gave us also more room for us to explore new concepts and ideas, and also the agile way of systems. So having a policy, believe it or not, I've been in developing a policy or a legislation that took a year and a half, and I've been into one that took a week. And that just tells you, based on the prioritizations of the government and so on, how convincing you are. But in regard to what we're doing, experimentation is always our keyword. So we tell them, we don't need a policy now. Let's experiment, let's test. And then if that is successful, then we could scale it up through policies and so on. So that also helped the mindsets.
Yeah, let me take advantage. I'll abuse this just for a second to take advantage of this situation. Like, do you think that using the future was also very efficient? Because there are different ways to get to that alternative agenda, or different ways to develop a case, an argument for a policy. But by doing the foresight, the futures, the imagination, was that actually a powerful and efficient mechanism? And it's quite self-serving in a situation like this, where obviously we're trying to promote the use of the future for that, to achieve those goals. But I just wonder, in your sense, as somebody who experiences the policy process, if you bring in all the lawyers, you have one process. If you bring in the future's imagination discussion, you have another process.
Right. It's definitely helpful. I'm telling you, it's even more beneficial in my opinion. And it's really, you see that paradigm shift even in the mindsets of decision makers back home. We are about storytelling as individuals in general. All of us, I think, no matter what cultures or backgrounds you come from, we love storytelling. And I think the UAE was able to have a lot of this. The challenge that we face is how to utilize these storytellings of the past, where some 2 or 3 Bedouins known to establish the UAE came about without any education, came about of developing this nation, and how did they have that vision at that time? I believe they were exposed to what's happening in the Western world at that time in the 50s, 60s, and that's why they made it easy with the wealth to transform. Nevertheless, we are going back to that time now. Me, as an individual trying to convince my boss, I would always use these storytellings to tell them, we need to start now. This is what we need. This is the legacy that we will leave behind. You know, it's 10 years time, we will be having fun and retired somewhere, but at least it's a legacy that we'll keep. And at least, you know, maybe future generation will say, thanks to these guys, they've done very well for us. So we'll help. This as well happen.
And I think just one
more questions before wrapping up.
Thank you very much. It's a fascinating presentation and experience. Thank you very much. Jean-Éric Aubert from the Foundation 2100. So we are thinking long term. My question is precisely when you look at the long-term future, are you thinking about putting in place a kind of monitoring tool to see how the children who will have benefited of your initiatives are going to be change agents or not? In other words, what is needed is a kind of tracer studies. Tracer, that means you follow the life of individuals and you try to see what happened. And you do that on a critical mass of people to see whether or not what you have tried to do for improving the future is operating or not. So my question is, do you think about such a tool to be put in place with the view that you are going to stay for decades?
Thank you. Yeah, so I'll answer that from 2 perspectives. So from the first perspective, it is from the research perspective. So as ECA, we do have a research function, and one of our priorities is developing some way to kind of monitor the impact in one way or another. It's still in the works, so I can't talk about it too much. But then from the other perspective is the nitty-gritty old school grabbing onto a KPI, even if we don't completely own it or can't, we don't have absolute authority over. And as much as we can push and nudge and hope that the efforts that we're putting into the work that we do are affecting that KPI that we've selected to represent our strategic priorities. You know, I've been in, you know, strategy and performance management for about 10 years now. So I've almost resigned to the fact that there's no perfect way to, you know, kind of link cause and effect, especially in government, especially in policy, especially when you're looking at country or citywide interventions, programs, etc. And all we can do is, you know, kind of go forward with that faith that yes, we are impacting this KPI. Inshallah, that's the ambition that we all have, and just keep going at it.
Thank you very much. Reaching the end, and so I would definitely not summarize things, but I can give maybe 3 words that are coming from the session quite strongly: curiosity, conditions, and negotiating safety. In terms of curiosity, it's interesting enough to see that we started with a process around early childhood. And so the point was to think about children's curiosity, and we ended up thinking about our own curiosity as the adults in the room. Now, when we think about this curiosity, it's interesting to know that there's conditions for that to actually come to be. So we talk about the time that it actually requires, some forms of trust. So we need to have allies in the process that enable us to believe that it makes sense for us to do it in the first place. And then the experiments that we need to do, bearing in mind that we learn along the way. So we come with an agenda or objectives, right at the beginning, and then those change along the way. And we also need time to allow for that to actually come to be. Now, around some of the things that came up and some of the key takeaways from the 2 labs that you've organized, bearing in mind that there's a 3rd one coming up in January, we had a lab on the future of parenting, another lab on the future of learning. And it's interesting to see how safety is actually taking different forms all throughout those 2 labs that you've organized. So we see how those different words are actually being renegotiated along the process. And so that meaning negotiation process is actually key in what you've developed all together. So thank you so much for sharing those results with us. And I'd like for you to actually share maybe your final words around the project.
Yeah. I mean, what was surprising for me is that I thought that there would come a lot of differences, but instead there were a lot of commonalities. And then what I gather from today and from our labs and from all is that we're going through phases of changes, but those phases of changes have a common aim at the end, which is protecting our kids. So this the safety things, having this curiosity to develop, and is the form of playing, the form of imaginations, the form of freedom, of experimenting, of these things. And of course, we're here in the converted room where we are all thinking about the future that is important, or thinking about the future, and we are a little bit biased in the way we approach these things, but we're actually developing something in Abu Dhabi which was not there before, and we're starting as ECA to be somehow the center for also other government departments to come and ask us, how did you do that? We want to do the same. So there are things that are similar and there are things that are different in the way that the environment is different and the way we respond to it. So for me, that was a fantastic time that we have with you today. Thank you so much. And I'd like to, thanks exactly. And I would like to thank in particular Martin and Luz, who actually came all the way to Abu Dhabi from all over the world. At one point, Luz was in Rio, and she came over, and like maybe them to spend a couple of words to thank you all for this, and thank you very much for listening to us.
Well, to thank you as well, because this has been an amazing adventure. And it's not finished. We're going back. We have more to do. I think, and maybe this is also maybe an open invitation, whether there might not be some joint research, a next step to be done more widely, to build on, to explore differently, to see to what extent the local as opposed to the global aspect can and should be developed. So maybe I'm speaking a little bit out of turn, but it seems to me that it is an invitation that we would, I think, gladly welcome.
Thank you. This room for our final session here, closing the day, and then yes, there's just another session. We finished at 6:30. Apparently, not everyone was informed, so it's a good thing that I'm actually saying that. And then we'll have obviously the gala later on during the day. Thank you for your attention.